Testing, testing. Michael at Wickerson Studios as I'm progressing through this beautiful book, Algorithms for Dummies by John Paul Mueller and Luca Massaron. I have produced a matrix class for what it's worth in Grasshopper for those that actually want to look at it. It's a pretty simple node. The outputs are a little simple down here. I probably shouldn't have left them as just letters outputs like this, but basically a matrix A and B. It's dealing with price and sales. It's dealing with a transpose matrix D, finding a determinant, and flattening matrices. And a lot of people who are good at Grasshopper will be like, maybe I don't need all that stuff, but it's working. It's working to a point. So to break it down, basically I've written in chapter 5 of the algorithm for dummies, and I will have this file available on GitHub, and it slowly progresses through taking a look at the algorithm for dummies translation and then giving you any information that's kind of relevant in the book. And maybe if I just close this out, you'll see what's going on. There's not many visuals, but you can see that basically there's a way to produce matrices off the bat. I do have to deal with certain types and output of lists to trees, which are essential. And there's certain breakdown of building a null matrices to building a kind of custom matrices, which is what I'm doing. Just building up this slowly in part. You can see the transition of it. This one I'll add the matrix elements, locating elements, and then adding numbers to those elements. And I think then I go on to a little bit of multiplication, dealing with element-wise product and dot product. But at this point, I have to break back into Grasshopper a little bit to do the multiplication, because there is a breakdown in here of after I get the algorithms written, the matrix type is not supported in GhPython. So instead of doing a simple matrix calculation and producing that, if you think about Grasshopper, I've got to turn it back into a list and back into a tree anyhow. So I'm leaving that for external to the data coming out of A and B. Then we'll look at dot product, the same thing. I've gone in and foolish, kind of funny, produce the dot product by a Grasshopper script, which is very cumbersome but extremely visual to figure out how the dot product is calculated, which actually produces some vectors and no visuals in Rhino. And then I flatten in the end, but instead of just using a flatten script that's in the components in Grasshopper, I go so far as to show what that actually is as flattening the matrix as a script later on. So we continue right through that chapter. This one then goes on to transposing the matrix and calculating the determinant. Some things work well and you can actually transpose without having to get into going into Grasshopper nodes as we progress through. So if we go down, everything's labeled pretty well. Transposing the matrix is just simply list to tree, which is nice. I don't know why this is so big. And then the final script is really all of it in one big go, which, well, I calculate the determinant for a while, and then in the end, I bring out the flattening of the form and actually do that through this little F output. So this is the one you want to open if you grab this script, Algorithms for Dummies, Chapter 5. I will save that as the master copy, and you'll see the entire script play out here. I will make it a little larger so we can take a look at it. And it's written kind of in a organized fashion, what is reliant throughout making everything. I did start to hard code matrices after a while because I just didn't want to get into those parametric sliders dealing with square matrices for the determinant and things like that. But you can see that accessing, the first thing is write the definition of the matrix, accessing specific matrix elements, then use the add method. The script's written in here, then performing multiplication, element-wise product, and dot product. It does set the work all the way through, but this will not run in Grasshopper. It just doesn't recognize it. So whenever I'm calling a matrix on some of these things, I can produce the matrices, but I'm having trouble calling them. And if in the end I end up with a matrix anyhow, I've got to turn that back into a list and back into a tree so Grasshopper recognizes it anyhow. Don't know how redundant this is, but a way to understand Numpy, matrices, pandas, and you have knowledge of Grasshopper, this may be a walking in to more scripting and detailed scripting for anybody who's good with Grasshopper, Python, and then back into C#. I'm glad I spent some time on C# because going back to Python is actually just common sense. It's actually beautiful. So anytime there's a return of a matrix, that's where it faults out and I have to go in. You'll see that as we look at farther along, dot product and element-wise product. Transpose is okay. it calls it here, and it does all right producing the list. The determinant, I have a little bit of information. It's a nice script for the determinant, and then I end with the flattening. Then after that, I put in the outputs. I simply call and work the matrix to build a null matrix, a custom matrix, a scalar and matrix addition with if conditionals. Performing multiplication element-wise product is written here. Performing multiplication with dot product is hard-coded here, and this is where I started to introduce hard-coded matrices, so I didn't have them be parametric. I had to control numbers and things like that. The example with the dot product is using price and sales, so that should make sense. This is right out of the text. It's not just cutting and pasting it, it's writing it in. It's trying to get in the habit of understanding how to write code, and it's coming fairly naturally, so that feels pretty good. The determinant is here, and then the flattening is here. And those are just calling up the functions as we go. And hopefully that is somewhat helpful to some people out there. It's definitely helpful for me to start thinking about what has to be scripted, how you would build a basic class and start writing components that you possibly could take to development. You'll want to push this through C# in the end and do some go over to my other website and go over to Jose Luis Garcia on Parametric Camp and learn how to write your plugins, and that can be really good. So hopefully this last section is all you really need in this area. I'll just kind of highlight all this and put it into a simple color. Oh my goodness, it's funny. I've been working in Grasshopper 2, so I've started to lose my mind over what I actually have to do in Grasshopper 1 as we transition. Hopefully a lot of this actually in Grasshopper 2 can be figured out in different ways. And I think I know why Grasshopper 2 has started to move in the direction it has. So it's more computational like this, and you can use scripting and coding directly in the node system. Kind of making sense, but this is more intermediate advanced for people that are really inquiring to what Grasshopper is good for and what you can do. My goal is to get in here and use matrices to drive some simple geometries of the elements by Euclid. And once all these nodes are up and running and custom user objects, then I can do more acrobatics and geometrics with geometry. Okay, Mike at Wickerson Studios. I will continue on chapter 2, which is exciting, the understanding the need to sort and search, which is going to introduce the library Pandas, and we're going to be right back into using GhPython remote and importing Pandas. And if we do that, we'll see what we have to input into each one of our scripts as we go. Thanks very much for watching. Oops.